All right, think about this for a second. You're going to tackle one of the gnarliest software challenges on the planet, building a brand new web browser from the ground up. We're talking millions of lines of code, insane performance needs, and security that has to be absolutely airtight. You'd think for a job that big, you'd pick the most powerful, most feature-packed tool you could possibly find, right? Well, what if you did the exact opposite?
Now get this. This is a quote from the CEO of a company doing just that, building a new browser. And it sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? Choosing a simpler, newer language for a monumentally hard problem because you're not smart enough for the complicated ones? Today, we're going to dig into that fascinating paradox, and you're going to see why this might just be one of the smartest engineering decisions happening right now.
So yeah, we have this massive task, and a choice of tool that seems to fly in the face of decades of conventional wisdom. And honestly, that's what makes this whole story so compelling.
When you need absolute, fine-grained control over your computer's memory, and you need bleeding-edge performance, which for a browser is totally non-negotiable, the industry usually tells you to call in the big guns. There are two heavyweights that power pretty much everything from your operating system to blockbuster video games. But, as it turns out, for a small, fast-moving team, these titans of the industry, well, they come with some serious baggage. So, let's talk about those titans, C++ and Rust. Look, they're the champions for a reason. They are unbelievably powerful. But that power comes with a pretty steep price tag, complexity. And complexity can be an absolute killer for productivity, especially when you're trying to innovate and move really fast. So on one side, you have C++ and Rust. They're like these incredibly complex, powerful machines that take a ton of skill and mental energy to operate. And on the other side, you've got the challenger, Zig. And Zig is making a huge bet that in the long run, simplicity and being explicit is actually the more powerful approach. Let's break down why those established players just weren't the right fit here.
First up, the granddaddy of them all, C++. Nearly every major browser you use is built with it. But it's been around for over 40 years. And boy, does it show. It has just accumulated this mountain of features, and there's often like 5 different confusing ways to do the exact same thing. That creates a huge mental load on developers. And yeah, it gives you memory control, but you have to be on guard like all the time to avoid nasty bugs. And that's before we even mention the nightmare of complex build systems like CMake. You can see why a small team might just say, no thanks.
Okay, so what about the modern alternative, Rust? It's famous for its safety guarantees, which is awesome. But that safety comes from this super strict compiler feature called the borrow checker. It's powerful for sure, but it has a legendary learning curve. You often hear developers talk about fighting the borrow checker. For something as complex as a browser engine, you can end up in a real wrestling match with the compiler. The only way out is to use unsafe Rust, which drops those safety guarantees and is notoriously tricky to get right.
So if C++ is like this dense jungle of features, and Rust can sometimes feel like programming in a straitjacket, what's left? Well, this is where our challenger, Zig, strolls onto the scene with a completely different game plan.
Zig's entire mission, its whole reason for being, is built on simplicity and clarity. The core philosophy is no hidden control flow, no hidden allocations. What that really means is the programmer is always in the driver's seat. You always know exactly what the code is doing. There's no spooky magic happening behind the curtain. If your program uses memory, it's because you wrote the code that told it to. Now here's the really cool part. This obsession with simplicity, it isn't a limitation. It's actually a superpower. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to look at a couple of Zig's secret weapons that turned this simple philosophy into raw, practical power. This first one is a real game changer. In Zig, you can't just magically create something out of thin air. You have to tell any function that needs memory how to get that memory by passing in what's called an allocator. Now, that might sound tedious, but trust me, it unlocks these incredibly powerful and safe ways to manage memory. And this pattern just illustrates the genius of it perfectly. The Arena allocator is, well, it's a dream come true for a web browser. Think of it like this. For every new web page you load, the browser grabs a big, fresh sheet of paper. That's the Arena. All the work for that page, parsing HTML, running scripts, everything gets done on that single sheet. Then, when you close the tab, you don't go back with an eraser for every little thing. You just crumple up the entire sheet of paper and toss it. Boom, done. It's ridiculously fast, it's simple to understand, and it makes memory leaks for that task basically impossible. Zig's other secret weapon is a feature called comp time.
This is a way to run Zig code at compile time, so while your program is being built, instead of when it's being used by a person. It's like having this brilliant little robot assistant that does a ton of setup work for you before the program even starts, automating all the boring stuff.
So how is this useful in the real world? Well, when you're building a browser, you have to connect your core engine to a JavaScript engine. That traditionally means writing tons of tedious, mind-numbing glue code just to make them talk to each other. With calm time, the Zig compiler can just look at your code, figure out what's needed, and poof, it writes all that glue code for you, automatically. That's a massive, massive productivity boost.
And the benefits just keep coming. Zig has amazing support for using existing C code, which is huge. It also has its own simple built-in build system, so you can just say goodbye to wrestling with external tools. And finally, it compiles fast. And any developer will tell you that a quick feedback loop is absolutely critical for staying productive and in the zone.
So, you put all of this together and you have to ask yourself, is choosing this underdog language a reckless gamble on a newfangled toy, or is it a brilliant strategic bet on the future of software?
And we gotta be realistic here. Zig is not at version 1.0 yet. That means it's still evolving. New versions can and do introduce changes that break old code. For any company, adopting a language this new is a significant risk. It's a very real bet on its future.
But it's a bet that more and more really innovative companies are willing to make. This isn't just one browser team off on an island. You've got projects like Bun, an incredibly fast JavaScript tool that was just acquired by the AI giant Anthropic. You've got Tiger Beetle, a financial database where performance is literally money. These are serious, high-stakes projects making that same bet on Zig's philosophy of simplicity. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. This whole story isn't just about Zig versus Rust or C++. It's a signal of a much bigger shift happening in the tech industry. As our software and systems just get more and more complex, there's a growing hunger for tools that are simple, clear, and put control back in the hands of the developer. People are realizing that sometimes the most powerful tool is the one you can actually fit inside your head. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. In a world that just feels like it's drowning in complexity, could it be that the most profound innovation isn't about adding more features, but about having the discipline and the courage to take them away? Could it be that in the end, simplicity is the ultimate superpower?